All right. Welcome back after the coffee break. We have Jessica here with me, calling from Brazil, very far away. And she is telling us a bit about traveling through a secure API in Python. Jessica,
Hello.
hey,
Hi.
great to have you here. And thank you for taking the time to prepare the talk and everything. I'm very curious to hear about this. Your talk and the security and secure APIs and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks.
Cool. All right. So I don't want to take much of your time. You have 30 minutes.
Okay.
I will be here in the back.
Okay, thanks.
Wait.
So, welcome to Traveling Through a Secure API with Python. Hi, my name is Jessica, as you probably know now, and I'm a senior developer advocate at Auth0. I'm also a podcaster, and I have a podcast about data science here in Brazil called Pizza de Dados with a friend of mine. And I'm also an instructor about data science in both Data Bootcamp, a bootcamp here in Brazil, and LinkedIn Learning in the Brazilian library. So as I talked a lot about Brazil already, so I'm also a Pythonista, and here's a picture of one of the Python Brazils that I went to. We have a lot of Pythonistas here. It's a very tight community, and I love being part of this community. So this makes me really happy to actually be here in EuroPython because I love to connect with Pythonistas. So this is a great opportunity for me to meet you all watching from the other side of the screen. So before we get started, I wanted to give you a sneak peek of what I'm going to show you how you can build today. So this is the utmost goal of this talk. I'm a hands-on person, so I prefer to actually give tutorials and workshops so that we can have that moment together for talking and developing our skills and sharing knowledge, and that I can make sure that you are following up in your understanding. But I could not pass this opportunity to be here today with you and talk about building APIs. So because we are going to build an API, I'm going to start with 4 endpoints, and we are going to use Flask 2.0 that just came out. We are also going to do a little bit of data manipulation using pandas. The data scientists in me love pandas, so that is a great opportunity to use it. And I'm also going to show you how you can protect your endpoints that does data manipulation so that only you can access that set of endpoints. And afterwards, because, well, you're going to build something, so you want to show your friends and colleagues and family. So let's deploy that to the cloud. I'm going to use Heroku, but you could use whichever cloud service you want. So let's go through each of these steps. And whenever I'm trying to build something with code, I always go back to the basics. That's my first step always. So this brings me to actually the place where I met Python and the Python community and became part of what I call my Python family, which was Ribeirão Preto. So the first time that I actually given a talk in Ribeirão Preto for a few friends of mine was about R and how to do data science stuff with R. I was super, super nervous, but it was great. And that's actually where I learned the first time that everything that I did in R, you could do in Python as well. So that opened up my eyes for a number of possibilities. So whenever I'm building something new, I always refer back to the basics that I learned, and I can build on top of the knowledge that I know, especially if I'm learning something new as I go. So talking about the basics, I always start my APIs with at least 2 endpoints. The first one will be the home endpoint, the one that it accesses by going to the / URL. And in this case, we're going to show the map. And the second one is the oops endpoint that I redirect people to in case something goes wrong during the processing or during the process of accessing my API. And if you are new to Flask, this is what two basic endpoints would look like. Only a few lines of code. You have to import Flask object, start your app, and then define both endpoints. And because I'm already using Flask 2.0, which I kind of love, I'm using the syntax sugar to define which of the HTTP methods I'm going to use for accessing each of those endpoints. So in line 7, I have the decorator for getting method for the home endpoint, and so on and so forth. And those two endpoints are going to serve two HTML files. One, the index file for the home, that's where my map will be. And the other one will be the oops file. At this point, this oops file just say, hey, if something went wrong, go back to home. So it's very simple HTML. And after I have my basic endpoints, I can run my API. What I do is I build the things that are going to handle data. So the first endpoint that I usually do is a ping endpoint. In this case, my ping endpoint will help me regenerate my map. So while I'm developing, I might need to regenerate the map a couple of times. So why not have an endpoint that does that for me instead of me actually running the code every time that I need to have a new map? So in this method, in this endpoint, actually, excuse me, I have a method that's called create map. And this is the method that does the magic of actually creating the map. And we are going to see that in a little bit, so don't worry. And the second protected endpoint, well, right now it's not protected, but it will be protected in the future, is called places. So what places does, it accepts a post request, and it takes the data from the body of this request and creates a new pinpoint location on my map. And it does that by doing a little bit of data manipulation using pandas and then regenerating the map. And I've been talking about data a little bit. So I'm a data scientist, at least I was a data scientist until I joined Auth0. But it's not that I left a job that held the data science title that I stopped being a data scientist. So I always think about the data that I have. And this brings me back to one time that I went to Austria to record a course. So I always think back with this to this moment in time because, well, until then, I used to think that I would speak a lot from conferences calls and from pair programming sessions and all the meetings in my day-to-day because I was already working remote, so I had a lot of video conferences to do. I always end up my day saying, no, well, I talked a lot today, so I'm feeling tired from talking, if that's possible. But once I went to Austria to record this course, I found out that actually what happens is you don't talk as much as you thought. Because during the recording process, I had to speak actually 8 hours a day for practicing the classes that I was going to record and actually recording the classes. So it took me actually understanding better my data to realize that, well, I may talk a lot, but not as much as I would talk if I were recording a course again. So data is something that is very special to me, right? The data scientist in me always loves to look at data. And looking at the data that I had, because I wanted to show this data in a very interesting way, in this case, a map, I would have to make a collection of the cities that I wanted to pinpoint. So I built up this CSV file with some of the cities that I've been to, and with their names and their latitude and longitude. And you see why we need this. So the first thing that I need after having my data is actually loading this data from somewhere. In this case, I'm using everything free. So my data is stored in GitHub and is loaded from Heroku from GitHub. And the only thing is I have to log into GitHub to get this data. So I used PyGitHub to help me out. I generated an access token, and this library can do its magic by reading the CSV. And after that, what I need is to pass this CSV information into pandas, our great data science library to deal with table data. And then I generate a data frame from pandas that I can use and loop over to get the information for each of the city. Which brings me to the map, right? Because, well, I can't put pinpoints in a map that doesn't exist. So I need to create the map, and I created a function for that, and it is using Volume. So Volume is a library that relies on OpenStreetMap for creating maps. And the only things it needs to start is a location on the map to center the map around. So I created a function that returns me a centered map with a zoom factor of 3. And the zoom factor can be a little tricky because you have to try a little different zoom factors to see which one works best for your use case. So the zoom factor of 3 actually gives me that pretty view on my browser that shows all the locations that I have in my data set. And now that I have my map, I can actually create the markers for each of the city. So creating the markers involves only having a location. But because I want this map to be friendly to other people that might not know the location of each city that I've been to, like my friends, I also added the information for the city name on each marker. So the marker is built like this. You import the marker object from the Volume library. You give it a location, much as like the map we just did. And then you can add other levels of information, like coloring for each of the marker. You can add a name or HTML inside the marker so that you can see different things. In this case, I went with the most simple one. I give it the location and the name so that people can click on each of the markers and see where was the city, right? And after I have everything, I will also want to save my data because, well, I intend to visit the whole world if I can to share knowledge and meet other people, right? So because of that, I know that I'm going to need to add more cities to my data set. And I just don't want to go into GitHub to do that. I can if I want to, but I also want to be able to add cities by accessing my API. So I created the save method that actually dumps the information, the updated information into GitHub, the same way I can read from GitHub. And once I've got all these helper functions done, I can put it all together into the two main functions that I'm using. The one for creating the map that I use while regenerating the map on the ping endpoint, and the other one for updating the data set and then regenerating the map. So I have here my create map that calls all the other functions that I already have. And I chose to do this way because then my endpoint doesn't have to suffer any changes in case, for instance, I decide to change the way that I store data from GitHub to, I don't know, a SQL database or something. So here we go. After that, I also, oops, I have to go back here. Oh, okay, here we go. I also create the create new place. This only does like add the information for the new city to my data set. And I have to actually call the create new map again if I need to. And now I have the protection part. So one thing that happened to me in my first big Python event, it was at Python Brazil on the very first day, and I kind of twisted my ankle. And you can see in this picture that it wasn't ideal, but I could always rely on my friends because, well, this is right after I twisted the ankle and went to the hospital to have it immobilized. And my friends helped me out through the whole event. I didn't miss any talks that I wanted to watch. I didn't miss any happy hours, as you can see, from all the fun that we have in Brazil when we have Python events, because, well, it's a gathering that is very friendly and we all want to enjoy everybody so much that we always have time to have fun a little bit after each of the talks days. So the same way that I relied on my friends during Python Brazil one time ago, you can also rely on Auth0 to protect the endpoints. And I'm speaking about Auth0 because actually it is really simple to protect endpoints with Auth0. So the first thing that you will need is actually an account on Auth0. And after you log into that account, you can access your dashboard. And you will probably see something like I'm showing right here in this picture. It is the very getting started page. It links you to a bunch of quick starts that we have. But right now, what we need is to protect an API. So on your menu on the left side, you can access your applications section. And in the applications, you can set up a number of applications, but in this case, we are going to choose APIs, well, because we are protecting an API. And after you click that, you will see a list of APIs available to you. Here, I have two APIs, the Auth0 Management API that comes with any account that you make on Auth0. And the second one, Base API, is actually something that I have for another code sample that I was working on. So for this API, we're going to create a new one. And you can do that by clicking the Create API button on the top right corner. And then you see a form to fill with information for your API. And well, my advice to you is that you give a very representative name of your API, because once you have multiple projects going on, you might need help knowing which one refers to each one. So in this case, I gave it the name Where Have I Been? Because, well, I'm trying to build a Where Have I Been map. And the identifier that we are going to use later and that you can't change, I just chose the first letter of each word and went with it. And it can be anything that you want to. So after you click the Create button, you'll see the information for starting with your API. And you can check it out, the quick starts, and you can check out the settings and permissions, but that's it. You don't need to do anything else in the dashboard. You are good to go. Well, actually, you need to update your code so that your code is protected, right? So to do that, you can go to the Task tab in the dashboard to actually get an access token. And there are two ways that you can get this access token. You can either do a request with this URL example that we got here, or you can copy the access token right below that. So after you have everything set up on the dashboard, you go back to your code and you're going to need two decorators on each of the protected endpoints. And the first one is the cross orange, and it comes from the Flask course package. And it's going to make sure that I have the headers that I need, like the content type is going to be application JSON, and the authorization header, which will have my access token. And the second one, the requires auth, is actually provided to you by Auth0. So you can just copy the code and put it on your modules, whichever way you prefer, and then you can use it. And just so that you know, you actually can access this code and look it over in our quick starts for how to create an API with Python and protect it with Auth0. And of course, like I said, you can copy the access token from the test tab, or you can see the code for making the request. Just keep that in mind because you're going to need that access token afterwards. So at this moment in time, I have everything that I need, or at least almost everything that I need for deploying my API. I have all my code, I have my protected endpoints, and I have my Auth0 account set up. And you may be wondering, okay, so what else is required for deploying? And every time that I get to this point in my development, I remember one time that I was not ready at all for an event that I went to. So here in Brazil, we have what's called Campus Party. And Campus Party is a technology event. Today, it used to be about gaming and spending a whole lot of time with fast internet, but today it's about technology as well. So I was invited to talk at Campus Party one time about a project I was working on at the time for civic tech in Brazil. And I thought, well, why not? And the packaging for going to the event was actually staying in the camping area. I should have guessed, but for some reason, I didn't know I had to bring camping gear. Well, they give you the tent, but I didn't know for some reason that I would have to bring, I don't know, an air mattress or a sleeping bag. So I was so not ready for the moment. Could you guess that? It's a camping event. Come on. But whenever I think about that, I always have a fun memory on how I could rely on my friends again, because they kind of saved me, gave me all the material that I needed to be comfortable at the event and enjoy meeting all the people and talking about technology. And in the case for Heroku, the preparation package, let's say like this, is you have to have two files. The first file is a proc file. And while you're developing with Flask, you're probably going to run the development server by running Flask run on your terminal. But that's not ready for production. So you need to actually have a new server that is production ready. In this case, I'm using Unicorn. And also, you need to tell Heroku how to run your app, right? So the proc file does that job. So it tells you, hey, Heroku, I have a web application, and the way to run it is a Unicorn app. And other than that, you also need a pip file. And the pip file has all the packages that is going to be required to run your API, where to download them from, and what Python version you are using. So after you commit that, you are pretty much set. You just have to log into Heroku or create your account, download the Heroku CLI, and push your code to the cloud, right? And it's really supposed to be very straightforward. Heroku tells you how to do everything and walk you through all of the steps, and that's pretty much it. So now you're saying, okay, cool, you showed all the code, you show how to set up everything. So let's see that in real life, right? So part of my also preparation package is actually using a tool called Insomnia. And Insomnia does a lot for me. You can set up variables and you can set up your requests so that you can just run through over them and everything will be ready for you. So for example, I have my home endpoint set up. So I can do a request to my base URL, in this case, the Heroku page. So if I send this request, and it might take a little while because Heroku can take a little while to reply, depending on the time. Let's see if it goes. You should see something like my map that I have right here. So that's what you should see inside Insomnia. And there we go. Insomnia shows you the map, right? It took a little while because it was the first time loading this today. And I also have all the requests for my protected endpoints here. But before I can run them, I need to access Auth0. Of course, I could copy my access token from the dashboard, but I like to have my access token being obtained by doing a request. So I do a post to the Auth0 authorization endpoint, and I get my access token. And this is stored inside a variable that I can reuse for my other requests. So I have my request set up here that I can actually check the access token. And you can see here is the same value that I obtained from my last request. So if I do a generate new map request, that is going to access my ping endpoint and rerun the process for generating the map. And this can take a while, but once it is done, it shows my map again. Now, this has no difference between the thing that I was showing on my browser because, well, there is no new cities in there, right? So if you are creating your first map, I have a suggestion for you. Why not start your map with the city that you are right now watching the stock? So in my case, I'm at São José, which is a city right here in the south of Brazil. And this is the latitude and longitude. And you can access these values from either Google Maps or OpenStreetMaps very easily. So if I do this request, and it takes a while because it has to run all the code and regenerate my map. And if I zoom in here, you should see a location placed here. Oh, and it's cached because I did this request before. So I need to send it over again, and it's going to take a while. And now I have São José in there. So you can see Florianopolis, where I twisted my ankle, and you can see São José that is really close to it. So that's it. Oh, let me skip over this. That's all that I had for today. I was really happy to be here and join you all and share this content. You can find me on all of the internet, searching for Jessica Temporal on Twitter or anything else. And I'm going to share the slides so you can access the code. That's it.
Fantastic, Jessica. Great talk.
Thanks,
I really
Francesco.
liked it. I actually have a very similar application without the protection, which I should look into about tapas places I've been to. You know.
Oh, that's so awesome! What a great idea.
It's not as exotic as you. It's just like food and drinking and so something like that.
I love food, so I totally understand the need.
Fantastic. So great thing, great talk. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
So will the code be available? You mentioned something that you are going to put the code up.
Yes, the code is available. Actually, it's on private mode on GitHub, but it's going to be available right after this talk. And I'm going to share the slides so anybody can access it.
Fantastic. Yeah, because it would be nice also to explore a little bit the libraries that you use, for instance, this volume library and Auth0. Can you also mention something a little bit more about Auth0 and how it works? So I guess you showed the authentication using a token for an API.
Yes.
What other modes are there that we could use in I don't know, Flask or whatever?
Any other modes. So everything auth you can use on Auth0. Auth0 is supposed to make our developers like me and you lives easier. So we have a very complete package of libraries and SDKs that you can use, either in the back end, like Python, for instance, or in the front end, if you are a JavaScript person or a full stack developer, you can use Auth0 in any number of ways. And SSO, for instance, like using social login, you can use that too. So anything is possible if you use Auth0.
Fantastic. And just one last question, and we are running out of time, and I'm abusing my position of power here to just ask you questions. But I guess this is something that folks would also be interested in. Is there like a free tier account in Auth0 or something that we can use to test?
Yes, we have a free tier account, and actually this was using everything free tier, like GitHub, Auth0, and Heroku, and everything else. And just so that I can enjoy this time, if you have any questions more about Auth0, Python, or everything that I did on the stack, you can join me either on the Auth0 booth or during the breakout session we have for this track.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you, Francesco. It was nice to be here.